The rain was my only friend, a cold, drumming curtain trying its best to hide me, to wash away the fear clinging to my skin. But it couldn't. Nothing could scrub away the metallic taste in my mouth, the phantom pressure on my throat where his hands had been. "He's going to kill you, Clara." The thought wasn't new, but tonight, it felt like a promise. A whisper of death in my ear, clearer than the siren wail fading in the distance. He had meant it. Every word, every cruel squeeze, had been meant to deliver on that promise. My lungs burned. Each shallow breath was a knife in my chest. I didn't know where I was, only that it was somewhere far from him, far from the shattered glass on the kitchen floor, far from the monstrous rage that had twisted his handsome face. My bare feet slapped against the slick pavement, cold to the bone, but the pain was a dull hum compared to the terror that propelled me forward. Every shadow was him. Every distant headlight, every sudden gust of wind, made my heart leap into my throat. I was nothing. No phone, no money, no ID. Just the thin, torn dress I'd been wearing when he'd thrown me across the room. My hair, usually pinned up for work, was plastered to my face, wet and heavy. My jaw ached, a deep, throbbing pain where his fist had connected. I didn't dare touch it. I didn't want to feel the swelling, the bruising, the proof of his cruelty. A street lamp flickered ahead, casting long, grotesque shadows that danced and writhed. My legs threatened to give out. My stomach cramped with hunger, but even more so with fear. I looked around wildly, desperate for anything, any place to hide. A dumpster, an alley, anything. Then I saw it. A sleek, black limousine, enormous and impossibly long, idled silently by the curb, just beyond the flickering light. Its windows were tinted, opaque. It looked like a fortress. A rich man's fortress. A crazy thought sparked in my panicked mind. What if I could just disappear inside? Just for a moment. Just to catch my breath, to feel safe for one precious second before I had to run again. Without thinking, driven by a primal need for concealment, I stumbled towards it. My fingers fumbled for the handle, half expecting it to be locked. But it wasn't. It clicked open with a soft, almost luxurious sigh. I didn't hesitate. I slipped inside, pulling the door shut behind me with a gentle thud that sounded deafening in the sudden, cavernous silence. The inside was plush, impossibly soft leather seats, a scent of expensive cologne and something subtly smoky. It was warm. So warm. The darkness wrapped around me, a comforting blanket. I huddled on the floor, tucked into the footwell behind the driver's seat, pulling my knees to my chest, trying to make myself as small as possible. My heart hammered, a frantic drum against my ribs. I was safe. For now. The rain still lashed against the windows, a lullaby of danger I couldn't escape. But inside this dark, opulent box, I felt a momentary reprieve. I closed my eyes, picturing his face, twisted in fury, then forced it away. He wouldn't find me here. He couldn't. Suddenly, the limousine shifted. A soft hum vibrated through the floor. The engine. It was moving. A jolt of fresh panic shot through me. What have I done? I was trapped. Trapped in a stranger's car, heading to an unknown destination. But even that fear, immense as it was, couldn't eclipse the cold dread of what waited for me outside. I stayed perfectly still, barely breathing, a silent, terrified passenger on a journey to, where? I wish I knew where you're all watching from and what the weather is like there today. Please like and subscribe, and turn on that notification bell, so you don't miss what happens next. My world, which had been a screaming, chaotic blur of rain and terror, had shrunk to the space of a car floor. It was a space that smelled of rich leather and a faint, masculine scent of spice and cedar. It was warm, and for the first few minutes, that warmth was all that mattered. My shivers began to subside, though the deep, bone-rattling cold remained. The limousine moved with an unnatural smoothness. I couldn't feel the road, only a gentle, swaying glide, like being in the belly of a great, silent whale. The rain was a distant, muted drumming on the roof, far, far away. I was huddled so tightly my knees were pressed against my aching jaw. I tried to make myself invisible, a discarded pile of wet rags. My breath hitched, a small, painful gasp, and I pressed my hand to my mouth, stifling the sound. Don't be found. Don't be found. The chant repeated in my head, a desperate prayer. But a new fear began to creep in, cold and sharp. Where was I going? I had hidden from the monster I knew, only to be trapped by one I didn't. What kind of person rode in a limousine like this? A politician? A movie star? Or someone worse? The car slowed, the smooth glide easing to a perfect, seamless stop. My heart hammered. This was it. The driver would get out, would check the back, would find me. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for the shout, for the rough hands dragging me out and throwing me back into the storm, back to him. The driver's door didn't open. Instead, the rear door on the opposite side of the car clicked open, flooding the cabin with the sound of the storm and a sudden, sharp gust of cold air. I didn't dare look up. I only saw a pair of shoes. Not sneakers, not work boots. They were black, gleaming with a high shine polish even in the dim streetlights, and they looked like they cost more than my entire apartment's rent. They were huge. A man slid into the car, settling into the seat above me. He brought the cold with him, the scent of the rain and something else, a clean, sharp smell like expensive wool and winter air. The door shut with a heavy, solid thud, sealing us in. Silence. The only sound was the faint rustle of his coat as he settled in. He was big. I could feel the sheer size of him displacing the air in the car. He didn't say a word to the driver. Then, a low, deep voice, smooth as velvet but with an edge of gravel, cut through the quiet. He spoke in a language I didn't understand, clipped and guttural. Russian. My blood turned to ice. The title from the news articles I'd seen about the city's underbelly flashed in my mind, the Russian Brava. I wasn't just in a rich man's car. I was in a dangerous man's car. The driver replied in the same language, his tone respectful. Deferential. A glass partition, dark as night, hummed as it slid up, sealing us, me and this man, in the back compartment. My panic, which had been a raging fire, turned into a frozen, paralyzing dread. I was trapped in a small, dark box with a man who commanded this kind of silence, who spoke in Russian, who wore shoes that cost $1,000. The car began to move again, gliding back into the night. I tried not to breathe. I tried to be a ghost. I could hear the faint snick of a lighter, and a moment later, the smoky, rich scent of a cigar filled the air. It wasn't like the cheap cigarettes Marcus smoked, this was earthy and sweet. He was directly above me. If he so much as stretched his legs, he would hit me. My entire body was a single, screaming nerve. I was in more danger. I had run from a wolf and jumped into a lion's den. A small sound escaped my throat. A tiny, pathetic whimper, a bubble of pain and fear I couldn't hold back. The rustling of his coat stopped. The air in the car went completely still. I could feel him, right above me, frozen. He had heard me. I squeezed my eyes shut, my entire body rigid. Maybe he'd think it was the wind. Maybe the car. Then, a low, cold voice, Dmitri. He spoke in English. An accent, thick and Russian, turned the single word into a command. The glass partition hummed and slid down. Stop the car, the man ordered. The car glided to a halt. What is it, Господин Vitalev? The driver asked, his voice now laced with confusion. Turn on the lights in the back, the man, Господин Vitalev, said. His voice was calm, too calm. It was the calm of absolute control. The calm of a predator that knows its prey is cornered. But, sir. Now. A click, and the cabin was flooded with a soft, ambient light. It was blinding. I flinched, instinctively raising my hands to cover my face, a useless gesture. Get out, the man said. I didn't move. I was paralyzed. What? I whispered, my voice a dry croak. I said. He leaned forward, and I finally looked up. He was not a man. He was a mountain. Broad shoulders, a face carved from granite, and eyes. His eyes were the color of a winter sky, a pale, piercing blue that seemed to see right through me. They were cold, assessing, and utterly devoid of any warmth. He was dressed in a perfect black suit, a dark gray overcoat resting on his shoulders. A small, silver pin in the shape of a wolf's head was on his lapel. He stared at me, huddled at his feet, and his face was a mask of pure, lethal suspicion. He wasn't shocked. He was calculating. His gaze flicked over me, taking in my bare, muddy feet, my torn dress, my soaked hair. "Who are you?" he demanded. His voice was quiet, which was somehow more terrifying than a shout. I. My teeth were chattering so hard I couldn't form words. "I'm sorry. I was hiding." "Hiding," he repeated. It wasn't a question. His cold eyes narrowed. "From whom?" I shook my head, tears welling up and spilling over, hot against my cold skin. "Please," I begged, the word tearing from my throat. "Please, don't make me get out. He'll find me. He's going to kill me. Please, just let me hide. Just for a little while. I won't do anything." His expression didn't change. He was a statue. A beautiful, terrifying statue. He leaned back, the leather groaning softly. "You chose the wrong car to hide in, Malishka. Little one." He looked at me for a long, agonizing moment. His eyes dropped from my face, tracing the line of my jaw. I knew what he was seeing. The dark, ugly bruise already forming. The split in my lip that was still sluggishly weeping blood. And then, something in his eyes shifted. The cold, calculating suspicion was still there, but a new, different kind of cold had joined it. It was the cold of a deep, still ocean. It was anger. A focused, glacial rage. He didn't look at me when he spoke again. He looked straight ahead, at the partition. "Dmitri," he said, his voice flat. "Sir." "Drive. To the penthouse." "Sir, your meeting." "The meeting is cancelled." "Drive." Господин," the driver said, and the partition slid back up, sealing us in again. The car began to move. He still hadn't looked back at me. I was still huddled on the floor, a trembling, wet mess. I didn't know what to do. Should I get up? Stay put? "Sit on the seat," he commanded, not looking at me. I fumbled, scrambling up from the floor, my cold, numb limbs clumsy. I slid onto the plush leather seat opposite him, as far away as I could get, pressing myself into the corner. The car was wide, but it felt tiny, suffocating. He watched me, his face unreadable. He was Alexander Vitalev. The name echoed in my head. I'd seen it in the financial papers, a reclusive, absurdly wealthy real estate developer. But the papers never mentioned the whispers, the rumors of his other business. The Russian business. He reached into a compartment, pulled out a dark, heavy blanket, cashmere, it felt like, and tossed it at me. It landed in my lap. "Cover yourself," he said. "You are getting my seats wet." The words were harsh, but the act. I pulled the blanket around my shoulders, and the warmth was immediate, penetrating. I buried my face in the soft wool, hiding the sob that threatened to escape. We drove in complete silence for what felt like an eternity. I stared out the window, but the tinted glass and the rain turned the city lights into a meaningless, watery blur. He just sat there, perfectly still, looking at me. His gaze wasn't leering, like Marcus's would have been. It was proprietary. Like he'd found a stray, wounded animal and was now deciding what to do with it. The limousine slowed and turned, descending into the quiet, brightly lit belly of an underground parking garage. It was clean, empty, except for a few other high-end cars. The car stopped. The engine went silent. For a moment, there was only the sound of my own ragged breathing. "We are here," he said. Dmitri was already out, opening Alexander's door. Alexander Vitalev got out, unfolding himself from the car. He was even taller than I'd thought, well over 6 feet, a true giant of a man, his presence overwhelming. He didn't wait for me. He just started walking toward a set of stainless steel elevator doors. I scrambled out of the car, my bare feet hitting the shockingly cold concrete. I clutched the heavy blanket around me like a shield. He was at the elevator, his thumb pressed to a biometric scanner. The doors slid open with a soft ding. He stepped inside and turned, his pale eyes pinning me where I stood. He was waiting. He hadn't invited me. He had commanded me. I ran, my steps faltering on the cold ground. I slipped into the elevator just as the doors began to close, standing in the corner, as far from him as I could. The elevator was all mirrors and polished steel. I caught my reflection and flinched. The woman in the mirror was a stranger. A wild-eyed, bruised creature, draped in a rich man's blanket. Beside her stood Alexander Vitalev, a man who looked like he owned the entire world, his expression a mask of cold, dangerous indifference. The doors shut, and with a silent, sickening lurch, we began to rise. I was his prisoner now. I had run from a monster, and a king of monsters had found me. The elevator didn't just move, it ascended. It was so fast and silent that the only way I knew we were moving was the faint pressure in my ears and the numbers flickering on a discrete digital display. We were in a box of mirrors and polished steel, and I couldn't escape my own reflection. I was a ghost, a drowned rat, a bruised and broken thing clutching a rich man's blanket. Beside me, Alexander Vitalev stood like a stone idol, his massive shoulders taking up half the space, his face an unreadable mask of cold granite. He just stared straight ahead, at his own reflection. The elevator chimed, a soft, polite sound that felt completely wrong for the man beside me. The doors didn't open to a hallway. They opened directly into his home. My first thought was that I was in the sky. The entire far wall was glass, floor to ceiling, looking out over the city. The storm was a raging, silent movie on the other side of those windows, lightning spiderwebbing across the clouds far below us. We were above the storm. The apartment, the penthouse, was enormous, a vast, open space of white marble, black leather, and polished chrome. It was beautiful, but it was cold. There were no pictures, no clutter, no books, no sign that a human being actually lived here. It was a showroom for a life of terrifying, empty power. Alexander strode in, his polished shoes clicking on the marble. He didn't look back to see if I was following. He just knew I would. I was a stray dog he'd decided not to kick, and I knew my place. I scurried after him, my bare feet freezing on the stone floor, the cashmere blanket clutched tight around me. He tossed his heavy wool overcoat onto a stark black chair, where it lay like a dark, sleeping animal. He was still in his suit, perfectly tailored, and as he turned to face me, he looked like a god of this cold, white, sky-high place. I stood dripping on his floor, a small, pathetic stain in his perfect world. He didn't say anything for a long time. He just looked. His pale blue eyes raked over me, from my tangled, wet hair, down to my muddy, bare feet, and then back up. He lingered on my face, and his expression, which I'd thought was blank, hardened. "Sit," he commanded. He gestured with his chin to a long, white leather sofa. I perched on the very edge of it, my muscles so tight I was vibrating. I felt like a crow landing on a power line. I was still clutching the blanket, trying to hide my torn dress, my bruised skin, myself. He stood in the center of the room, looming. "I will ask you one time," he said, his voice a low, smooth rumble that vibrated in my bones. "Who are you?" My voice was a reedy whisper. "Clara. Clara Jensen." "Clara Jensen," he repeated, tasting the name. He didn't like it. "And the man you are running from? Who is he?" I flinched. The question brought back the image of Marcus, his face purple with rage, his hands on my throat. My ex-boyfriend. His name. It wasn't a question. I hesitated, a fresh wave of terror washing over me. Giving his name felt like a betrayal, not of him, but of my own survival. He'd always told me what would happen if I told anyone. If you ever tell anyone, Clara, I'll find them. And I'll find you. And I'll finish it. Alexander saw my hesitation. He took one step closer, and the room, which was already cold, dropped another 10 degrees. You are in my home. You will not lie to me. I'm not. I cried, the word high and thin. His name is Marcus. Marcus Pierce. Alexander nodded once, slow and thoughtful, as if I'd just given him a piece of a puzzle. Marcus Pierce. He did this to you? He didn't gesture. He just stared at my jaw, at my split lip. I couldn't speak. I just nodded, hot tears spilling over and tracing cold tracks down my cheeks. Why? I don't know, I whispered, which was the truest thing I'd said. He was angry. I burned the dinner. He changed. Tonight it was the worst. He lives in this city. Yes. An apartment, downtown. On 5th. I was spilling everything, the words tumbling out, desperate to make him understand. Please, I begged, you can't tell him I'm here. He'll find me. He'll hurt you. You don't know him. He's crazy. At that, a strange, almost imperceptible thing happened. The corner of his mouth twitched. It wasn't a smile. It was a cold, humorless smirk. He will hurt me, he asked, the arrogance in his voice so absolute it was breathtaking. He's dangerous, I insisted, my voice cracking. I can see that, Alexander said, his tone flat. He pulled a sleek, black phone from his pocket. He tapped the screen, then put it to his ear. He didn't speak to me. He spoke in Russian, his voice a series of short, sharp commands. I didn't understand the words, but I understood the name. Marcus Pierce, I heard, and 5th Street. The rest was a mystery. He ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket as if he'd just ordered a pizza. What did you do? I whispered, my heart a trapped bird in my chest. Who did you call? I am solving a problem, he said simply. No. I scrambled off the couch, my legs weak. The blanket fell to the floor, leaving me exposed in my torn, thin dress. No, you don't understand. You can't. You can't just call someone. He'll know. He'll kill me. He'll kill us both. You have to let me go. I have to keep running. I made it 2 steps toward the elevator before his voice cut through me, sharp as a whip. Sit down. I froze, my back to him. Now, Malishka. That word. Little one. It wasn't an endearment. It was a label. It was a chain. I turned, trembling, and picked up the blanket, wrapping it around myself. I went back to the sofa, my whole body shaking so hard I could barely sit. He walked over to me, slow and deliberate, like a wolf approaching a snared rabbit. He stopped right in front of me, so close I had to crane my neck to look up at him. He was a mountain of black-suited muscle, and he blocked out the light from the windows. You are in my home now, he said, his voice quiet, which was so much scarier than a yell. You are in my territory. That dog you ran from? He has no power here. He will not find you. He will not touch you. He will not even breathe your name again. You don't know him, I sobbed. And you, he said, his voice dropping to a terrifying whisper, do not know me. He is a man who hurts women. I am a man who ends men like him. The cold, stark finality of it stole my breath. I believed him. And that belief was more terrifying than anything Marcus had ever done. He stared at me, his face a hard mask, but his eyes were tracing the bruises, the cut. "You are hurt," he stated. He turned and walked to a panel on the wall, pressing a button. "Olga," he said into a speaker. "Bring the aptika. And prepare the guest room. The one facing east." He turned back to me. "You will stay here. You will not leave this apartment. You will not use a phone. You will not try to contact anyone. My people will handle this. Do you understand?" I can't. I don't have any money. I can't pay you for." His cold smirk returned. "Pay me? Malishka, you are a mouse that ran into a lion's den. You don't pay the lion. You just try to survive." Footsteps, sharp and quick, approached from a different hallway. A woman appeared. She was older, maybe in her 50s, with her graying hair pulled back in a severe bun. She wore a simple, pressed black uniform. Her face was as stern and unforgiving as her employer's. She carried a large, professional first aid kit. She walked into the room, her eyes flicking to me, to the wet, muddy floor, to the blanket puddled around me on the white sofa. Her lips thinned in disapproval. "Olga, Akastitye," Alexander commanded. "Clean her up. She will be staying." Olga just nodded, her gaze sharp. "Duh, Господин." Alexander looked at me one last time, his pale eyes unblinking. "You will do exactly as Olga says. I have business to attend to." He turned, grabbing his overcoat from the chair, and strode toward the elevator. He didn't look back. The doors slid open, he stepped in, and a moment later, he was gone. I was alone with the stern housekeeper. Olga set the first aid kit on the glass table with a thud. She looked at me. "So. You are the mess." I'm sorry," I whispered. Sorry does not clean marble." Her voice was thick with an accent, rough and no nonsense. "Come. Let me see this face." She didn't wait for me to agree. She sat beside me, her body not touching mine, and opened the kit. It was filled with professional medical supplies. She took out a sterile wipe, and before I could flinch, she was dabbing at the cut on my lip. I hissed, the antiseptic stinging like fire. "Be still," she snapped, but her hand, surprisingly, was not rough. It was firm, efficient, and practiced. "You are lucky. This one is not deep. The jaw, this will be ugly for a week." She worked in silence, cleaning my cuts, applying a small butterfly bandage to my lip. Her touch was clinical, impersonal. What is this place?" I dared to ask. "This is Господин Vitaliv's home," she said, as if that explained everything. What's going to happen to me?" Olga finished her work and snapped the kit shut. She looked at me, her dark eyes sharp, almost pitying. "You will do what he says. You will eat. You will sleep. You will be quiet. And you will not cause trouble for the Господин. And Marcus?" I whispered his name, and it felt like acid on my tongue. Olga's expression darkened. "That is not your concern. That is the Господin's * concern. He does not like loose ends. And he hates men who are loud." She looked at my bruises. "And messy." She stood up. "Come. I will show you your room." I followed her, still clutching the blanket. We went down a long, white hallway. She opened a door at the end. The room was beautiful. A king-sized bed, piled high with soft white pillows and a thick gray duvet. Another wall of glass, looking out over the city. And a private bathroom, bigger than my old kitchen. "There are clothes in the closet. They will fit," Olga said. I looked at her, confused. "How?" Olga sighed, as if I were a slow child. "The Господин provides. He called me from the car. He told me to have things ready. He does not like inconvenience. My blood ran cold. From the car? Before he'd even spoken to me? He had seen me on the floor, a terrified, wet creature, and his first thought had been logistics. He had been preparing to keep me. A shower, Olga ordered, pointing to the bathroom. Then sleep. Do not leave this room tonight. There is food on the table. I looked. A tray sat on a small desk, with a bottle of water, a sandwich, and an apple. Olga turned to leave, pausing at the door. Be smart, Devushka. Girl. He has saved your life tonight. Do not make him regret it. The door clicked shut, leaving me alone. I stood in the center of the room, the silence deafening. I was a prisoner. I had run from a small, violent cage, only to find myself in a vast, luxurious one, guarded by a man who could order clothes in my size from his car, who could solve a problem like Marcus with a single phone call. I walked into the bathroom. It was all marble and glass. I turned on the shower, the water steaming hot. I dropped the blanket and stepped under the spray, my knees finally buckling. I slid down the wall and sat on the shower floor, scrubbing at my skin until it was raw, trying to wash away the feeling of Marcus's hands, the smell of his anger. But I couldn't wash away the feeling of Alexander Vitaliev's cold, possessive eyes. I cried, silent, racking sobs that shook my entire body, until the water started to run cold. I got out, dried myself on a towel so thick it felt like a rug, and found the closet. It was full. Pajamas, sweaters, pants, even underwear. All new, with the tag still on. All in shades of gray, white, and black. His colors. I pulled on the softest pair of pajamas and climbed into the bed. It was like sinking into a cloud. I was exhausted, every bone in my body aching, but I was safe. I was finally, truly safe from Marcus. But as I fell into the black, deep well of sleep, my last thought was a cold, hard stone in my stomach. I wasn't free. I had just traded one monster for another. I woke up to silence. Not the silence of my old apartment, which was never truly quiet. The thin walls always carried the sounds of neighbors, of traffic, of Marcus breathing heavily beside me in a drunken sleep. This was a deep, absolute, soundproof silence. My first coherent thought was, I am not in pain. My second was, I am not afraid. Then my eyes snapped open, and the fear came rushing back, cold and sharp. This wasn't my room. This was a vast, white room, and the entire wall in front of me was a sheet of glass. The storm had passed, leaving behind a sky so blue it hurt to look at. The sun was high, blazing over the city. I was in the king-sized bed, under a duvet that felt like it was made of clouds. My body ached, my jaw throbbed with a dull, insistent pain, and my ribs felt bruised, but it was the ache of an injury, not the fresh, sharp sting of an attack. The memories of last night flooded in. The rain. The black limousine. The cold, pale blue eyes of Alexander Vitaliev. You are a mouse that ran into a lion's den. I was still in the lion's den. My heart started to hammer, a frantic, trapped animal rhythm. I sat up too quickly, and a wave of dizziness made the room spin. I squeezed my eyes shut, forcing myself to breathe. 1, 2, 3. I was alive. I was in one piece. I was not on the street. I looked down. I was wearing soft, gray cotton pajamas. I had a vague memory of pulling them on. I swung my legs out of bed. The floor was covered in a plush, white rug so thick my feet sank into it. I looked at the tray Olga had left. The sandwich was gone. I'd eaten it, apparently, in a haze of exhaustion. My first instinct was to run, but where? I padded to the glass wall. The view was terrifying. The city was a map spread out beneath me. Cars were like tiny, crawling insects. I was in the sky, a prisoner in a glass tower. The elevator. I needed a key, a code, a fingerprint. I had none of those. I was trapped. I turned to the closet Olga had mentioned. I opened it, and a small, choked sound escaped my throat. It wasn't just a few items. It was a full wardrobe. 10 pairs of soft pants. 10 sweaters, in shades of white, gray, and black. Neat stacks of underwear and socks, still in their packages. A pair of simple white sneakers, exactly my size. He had called from the car. Before he even knew my name. He had seen me, a drowned, beaten creature on his floor, and decided to stock a closet for me. The implication was so cold, so possessive, it made me shiver. This wasn't a temporary rescue. This was an acquisition. I went into the marble bathroom and looked in the mirror. Olga had been right. My jaw, from my ear to my chin, was a sickening, ugly bloom of purple and yellow. My lip was swollen, the small cut stark against my pale skin. My eyes were wide and haunted. I looked like a victim. I couldn't stand to see it. I turned on the shower, the water pressure a powerful, stinging spray, and washed my hair, scrubbing away the last of the street grime and the phantom smell of Marcus's apartment. I dressed in a pair of the black pants and a soft gray sweater. The clothes fit perfectly, unsettlingly so. I felt like a doll he was dressing up. I had to leave the room. I had to know. My stomach twisted with a new, urgent dread. What did he mean, solved a problem? What had that phone call done? I opened the bedroom door. The penthouse was even bigger in the daylight. Sunlight streamed in from the massive windows, glinting off the marble floors and glass tables. It was beautiful, but it was sterile. There was no life here. Just wealth. I found Olga in a kitchen that looked like it belonged in a high-end restaurant, all stainless steel and black granite. She was wiping down a counter that already gleamed. She didn't look up when I entered. "You are awake," she stated. "Yes. Thank you. I am paid to do my job." The gospodin left instructions. She pointed to the granite island, where a plate of fruit and toast was waiting. "You will eat." I sat on a metal stool, my hands trembling. Where is he?" "Mr. Vitalev?" "The gospodin is at his office. He is a very busy man." Will he be back?" Olga finally stopped wiping and looked at me, her dark eyes unreadable. "He lives here, Devushka. Of course he will be back." My heart skittered. I took a bite of toast, but it tasted like cardboard. I had to ask. If I didn't, the not knowing would make me go insane. Olga, the man I was running from last night. Marcus. Her expression tightened. "What about him?" "Mr. Vitalev, he made a phone call. He said he was solving a problem." Do you know what that means?" Did they? I couldn't say the word. "Dead." Olga turned her back to me, opening a cabinet. "You do not ask questions about the gospodin's * business. Please." My voice was sharper than I intended, bordering on desperate. "I have to know. Is he going to come here? Is he looking for me?" Olga let out a heavy sigh, a sound of deep, worldly impatience. She turned around, a dish rag in her hand. "The gospodin is a precise man. He does not half solve a problem. You are here. You are safe. That man." She made a dismissive gesture, like shooing a fly. "He is gone." "Gone? What does gone mean? Gone where? Did he leave the city? Is he in jail?" Olga's gaze was hard, almost pitying. "He is no longer your concern. He will never touch you again. He will never speak your name again. He will never, anything, again. Do you understand?" The silence that followed was heavy with everything she wasn't saying. My blood ran cold. He will never anything again. Oh, God. I wasn't just safe from Marcus. Marcus was gone. Not in jail. Not out of town. Gone. The finality of it hung in the sterile air. I felt a sudden, sick wave of something. It wasn't relief. It wasn't grief. It was horror. A man was gone because of me. Because I'd hidden in the wrong car. You look pale, Olga said, her voice flat. Eat your food. You will stay in the penthouse. Do not touch the elevator. Do not touch the Gospodin's asterisk desk. She pointed to a black, monolithic desk in the far corner. Do not go in his room. She pointed down a dark hallway. These are the rules. And with that, she turned back to her work, leaving me to grapple with the terrifying new reality she had just handed me. The rest of the day was a new kind of prison. A vast, beautiful, silent prison. I wandered from one glass wall to another, watching the city live its life, so far below. I was a ghost in a palace, with no phone, no internet, no books, no way to contact the outside world. I was completely, utterly isolated. My anxiety, which had been a frantic, screaming thing, settled into a low, heavy dread. I was waiting. I was a possession, waiting for its owner to return. The sun set, and the city dissolved into a galaxy of glittering lights. The view was so beautiful it was cruel. I was sitting on the white sofa, the same spot he'd commanded me to sit, when I heard it. The soft, polite ding of the elevator. My entire body went rigid. The stainless steel doors slid open. Alexander Vitalev stepped out. He looked exactly the same as he had last night. Perfect black suit, white shirt, black tie. Not a hair was out of place. He carried a leather briefcase, which he placed on the floor by the door. He didn't seem surprised to see me. He just stopped and looked at me. His pale blue eyes scanned me, a slow, methodical appraisal. He saw my clean hair, the gray sweater, the black pants. He saw the way I sat, perched on the edge of his sofa, my hands twisted in my lap. He saw the way my pulse was hammering in my throat. He said nothing. He simply walked to the massive glass wall and stood there, his back to me, looking out at the city he owned. Did you eat? He asked, his voice a low rumble. Yes, I whispered. Did Olga attend to your injuries? Yes. Silence again. The tension was a physical thing, a wire pulled so tight it was screaming. He was in control. He was letting me wait. He was making me ask. I couldn't stand it. What did you do? My voice was a shaky, pathetic thing, but it cut through the silence. He didn't turn. I told you I would. What did you do? I said, stronger this time. I stood up, my legs trembling. You. Olga said he's gone. What does that mean? What did you do to him? Alexander turned, slow and deliberate. The city lights framed him, turning him into a massive, dark silhouette. It means, he said, his voice soft, that you will never have to be afraid again. It means I have taken your problem, and I have erased it. Is he dead? The word came out in a choked gasp. Alexander Vitalev just looked at me, his face a perfect, cold mask. He didn't confirm it. He didn't deny it. He didn't have to. The answer was in his glacial eyes, in his absolute lack of remorse. He is no longer your concern, he said, his voice dropping, taking on that velvet, gravelly edge. He took a step toward me. You are my concern now, Malishka. He stopped, just a few feet away. I could smell the cold night air still clinging to his suit, the faint scent of his cologne. You are here, he stated, as if it were a law of physics. You are mine. And I protect what is mine. The words hung in the sterile air between us, heavy and final. I protect what is mine. My mind stalled. It couldn't process the statement. He was looking at me, his pale blue eyes like chips of ice, and he was claiming me. Not asking. Not suggesting. stating a fact, as if he'd just announced the time or the weather. I swallowed, my throat dry as dust. I'm not yours. I'm not a thing. You can't just take me. His expression didn't change. He didn't get angry. He didn't even seem surprised. He just tilted his head, a gesture of mild curiosity, as if a kitten had just tried to roar. I did not take you, Malishka, he said, his voice a low, patient rumble. You came to me. You hid in my car. You begged me not to throw you out. I am simply agreeing to your request. That's not. I was scared. I was running for my life. I just needed a place to hide for a minute. And I have given you a place to hide forever. The finality of it, the cold, possessive logic, knocked the air from my lungs. He was twisting my desperation into a contract, my plea for a moment's safety into a life sentence. No, I whispered, shaking my head, tears of frustration and terror burning in my eyes. No, you can't do this. You saved me. I'm grateful. God, you don't know how grateful I am. But you have to let me go. Let you go, he repeated. He said it as if it were a word in a language he didn't understand. Go where, Clara? Back to your apartment? The one your dog knew? I'll go to a shelter. I'll get a job. I'll figure it out. I can't stay here. A shelter, he mused. He took a step closer, and I instinctively took one back, my bare feet silent on the cold marble. With other broken people. With no protection. You think the world is safe now, just because I have removed one animal from it? The world is a forest full of them. He was in front of me now, his sheer size blocking out the glittering city lights. I was a small, trembling mouse under the shadow of a mountain. You are safe here, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. You will have food. You will have clothes. You will have a bed. No one will ever put their hands on you in anger again. He paused, his cold gaze softening for a tiny fraction of a second. I will never put my hands on you in anger. That promise, a direct contrast to Marcus, hit me harder than a slap. He was offering me the one thing I craved more than freedom, safety. He was a monster, yes, but he was a monster who was promising to be my monster, to keep all the other ones at bay. Before I could find my voice, Olga appeared, as silent as a ghost. Господин. Dinner is ready. Alexander didn't even look at her. His eyes stayed locked on mine. Good, he said. He gestured with his head toward a vast, dark wood table in an adjoining area. We will eat. It was another command. I stood frozen, my mind screaming run, but my body, trained by months of abuse, betrayed me. It recognized a dominant male, a new master, and it was terrified to disobey. I walked to the table, my legs feeling like jelly, and sat in the chair he indicated. The table was enormous, big enough for 20 people, but it was set for only 2, at one end. Alexander sat at the head. I was to his right. Olga moved with silent efficiency, placing a bowl of soup in front of me. It was a clear broth with vegetables, and it smelled delicious. My stomach cramped violently, reminding me I'd eaten nothing but a dry sandwich in nearly 24 hours. Alexander unfolded a black napkin and placed it in his lap. Eat, he said. I picked up the heavy silver spoon, my hands shaking so hard the soup sloshed. I couldn't look at him. I could only look at the bowl. I was having dinner with my savior, my captor. A man who had erased another man for me. My stomach churned, but my hunger was a more powerful, more primal thing. I took a sip. The soup was hot, rich, and perfect. It felt like life spreading through my cold limbs. We ate in silence. The only sounds were the faint clink of silver on porcelain and the distant, impossible to hear hum of the city far below. It was the most tense, terrifying meal of my life. Marcus was loud. His rages were explosions of noise, of crashing plates and shouted curses. Alexander's power was in his silence. It was a suffocating, heavy blanket of absolute control. He didn't watch me eat, not directly. He ate his own soup with a slow, deliberate grace. He was a civilized man. A civilized man who ordered deaths between courses. Olga took the bowls. She brought plates. A simple roasted chicken, potatoes, green beans. It was real food, nourishing food. "You are too thin, Malishka," he said, his voice neutral. "You will eat. Olga is a good cook. You will get your strength back." "Why are you doing this?" I finally managed to whisper, pushing a bean around my plate. He paused, his fork halfway to his mouth. He looked at me, really looked at me, and I felt like a bug under a microscope. "Why?" he mused. "Because I can. Because, when I saw you on the floor of my car, so broken, and so terrified, something." He seemed to be searching for the word. "Something settled. I have decided. You will stay. You will heal. You will be mine. I am not a stray cat you found. I am a person." "Yes," he agreed, as if this were obvious. "You are. A person who was about to be killed. A person who now has a closet full of clothes and a roof over her head that is, I assure you, the safest place in this entire city. A person who will never have to work again, or be afraid again, or be cold again." He took a bite of chicken. "It is a good trade, I think." You erased him." The word felt heavy and sick in my mouth. "Yes." His voice was flat. "He was garbage. He hurt you. He would have hurt others. Now he will not. The world is cleaner. You are welcome." He said it with such casual, chilling arrogance. "You are welcome." As if he'd just held a door open for me. I felt dizzy, sick. I was complicit. His gift to me was a man's life. I can't," I said, putting my fork down. "I can't be here. I can't be with someone who does that." "You are not with me," he said, his voice dangerously soft. "You are under my protection. They are different things." He placed his own knife and fork down, perfectly parallel on his plate. He turned his body to face me, and the full, crushing weight of his attention settled on me. "Let us be clear, Clara," he said, using my name, which somehow made it worse. "Your old life is over. The man who defined it is gone. Your apartment, my men are cleaning it out as we speak. Your things will be disposed of." "What?" I gasped. My clothes? My pictures? My mother's." I thought of the small, framed photo of my mom I kept on my bedside table. "You have new clothes," he said, dismissing my entire life with a wave of his hand. "This is a new life. You cannot be tied to the old one. It is not clean. It is not safe. You can't. You can't just throw my life away." "I already have," he said. He wasn't being cruel. He was just stating a fact. "I am giving you a new one. A better one. You will stay here. In this room," he gestured to the guest room I'd slept in. "You will not leave the penthouse. Olga will care for you. I will provide. These are the rules. I won't be your prisoner." I cried, shoving back my chair. It screeched horribly on the marble floor. I stood up, defiant, my whole body shaking. Alexander Vitalev didn't move. He didn't even flinch. He just watched me. He was a lion watching a mouse have a tantrum, his patience absolute, his power unthreatened. "Prisoner," he said, testing the word. "Prisoners are in cells. They are beaten. They are starved. You are in a penthouse. You are eating roasted chicken. You are wearing cashmere. You are safe. It is not a prison, Malishka. It is a gilded cage. I don't care. I want to leave. No. The word was as final as a gunshot. You can't stop me. He finally stood up. Slowly, he unfolded himself from his chair, rising to his full, terrifying height. He was a shadow against the city lights. He walked around the table until he was standing in front of me again, so close I could feel the heat radiating from his body. I should have run. I should have screamed. But I was frozen, my back pressed against the wall. He didn't touch me. He just loomed. He whispered. You cannot leave. The elevator will not open for you. The stairs, it is 63 floors. And if you made it to the lobby, my men are there. They have your picture. They know you are not to leave. You are mine, Clara. You are mine to protect. And I will protect you, even from your own foolish decisions. He was so close. I could see the flecks of gray in his pale blue eyes. He smelled of that expensive cologne, of power, of cold, clean air. Please, I begged, the last of my defiance crumbling, replaced by a cold, desperate dread. Please don't do this. He looked at me for a long, agonizing moment. His gaze was heavy, possessive. I felt like he was memorizing me. I am not Marcus, he said, his voice a low, rough growl. I will not hurt you. I will not raise my voice to you. I will not lay a hand on you in violence. You have my word. As the head of my family, you have my word. The vow was so absolute, so formal, it was shocking. But you will stay, he continued. You will stay here, and you will heal. And you will be safe. And you will be mine. He turned and walked away, his heavy footsteps echoing on the marble. Finish your dinner, he commanded over his shoulder, as if he hadn't just stolen my life. I slid down the wall until I was a heap on the floor, the sobs I'd been holding back finally ripping out of me. They were not tears of sadness for Marcus. I felt nothing for him but the ghost of my fear. They were tears of terror for myself. I had been saved. But I was not free. I don't know how long I sat there, but eventually, the cold of the marble seeped into my bones. I heard his footsteps again. I looked up. He was standing there with the cashmere blanket he'd given me in the car. He didn't speak. He just draped it over my shoulders. His hand brushed my neck, his fingers warm, his touch impossibly gentle. It was the first time he had touched me. I flinched, hard, a violent, full-body tremor. He pulled his hand back as if he'd been burned, his face hardening into a mask of cold fury. But the fury wasn't for me. He trained you to fear a man's touch, he whispered, his voice thick with a sudden, dark rage. He looked at his own hand, then back at me, and his expression was a terrible, cold promise. I was right to erase him. He turned and left me there, a prisoner wrapped in the soft, warm blanket of her jailer. The days bled into one another, measured not by a clock, but by the rising and setting of the sun outside my glass wall. My life was a routine, orchestrated by ghosts. Olga would bring food. I would eat. I would shower. I would dress in the soft, gray clothes of my captivity. I would sit on the white sofa and stare at the city, a queen in a snow globe, beautiful and trapped. My bruises began to fade, the angry purple slowly melting into a sickly yellow-green. My lip healed, the small cut closing, leaving behind only a faint, tender line. My body was mending, but my mind was stuck. It was frozen in that moment in the limousine, caught between the animal terror of Marcus and the glacial, possessive calm of Alexander. Alexander was a shadow. He would leave before I woke, his presence only hinted at by the faint scent of his cologne in the hallway. He would return after dark, the soft ding of the elevator announcing the arrival of my jailer. Our dinners were silent, agonizing rituals. We would sit at opposite ends of the giant, polished table. Olga would serve us. He would eat. I would push food around my plate, my stomach in knots. He never forced me to eat, but his silent, assessing gaze was its own kind of pressure. He was a man watching a new, expensive pet, waiting for it to acclimate or die of fright. I had learned to be small. I had learned to be silent. I had learned to glide, not walk, to make myself as invisible as possible. It was the fourth night. Or maybe the fifth. I had lost count. He was home early. The sun was just beginning to bleed orange and purple over the skyline when the elevator chimed. I was on the sofa, clutching a pillow to my chest, and I flinched, my whole body jerking. He stepped out, shrugged off his overcoat, and saw me. He didn't speak. He walked to the bar, a block of black marble in the corner, and poured himself a small glass of amber liquid. He stood with his back to me, looking out the window, the glass in his hand. I was so thirsty. The water was in the kitchen. The kitchen was on the other side of the room. He was between me and the kitchen. I waited. 1 minute. 5. He didn't move. He just stood there, a dark, motionless silhouette. My throat was parched, stinging. I couldn't wait any longer. I stood up, my bare feet making no sound on the rug. I slipped off the sofa and began to walk, my path a wide arc around him, pressing myself as close to the far wall as I could. I was a mouse, skirting the edge of the room to avoid the snake. I was almost past him. Almost safe. He turned his head. It was a small movement, but it was sudden. He didn't look at me, just turned toward the sound of his apartment's air system kicking on. I didn't see that. I just saw the turn, the sudden motion in my peripheral vision. My training kicked in. I didn't scream. I didn't gasp. I just reacted. My body slammed back against the wall, my hands flying up to cover my head, my shoulders hunched, my eyes squeezed shut. I made myself small, a tight ball of anticipated pain, bracing for the blow. The silence that followed was absolute. It was heavier, more terrifying, than any sound. I waited. My heart was a frantic bird against my ribs. No blow came. Slowly, my hands trembling, I lowered them. I opened my eyes. He hadn't moved. He was still standing by the window, his back to me, his head still turned. But he was no longer relaxed. He was rigid, a statue of pure, coiled tension. The glass in his hand was so still the liquid didn't even tremble. "Did you want something?" he asked. His voice was a stranger's. It was a low, tight, strangled thing, thick with an emotion I couldn't place. "Water," I whispered, my voice shaking. I wanted a glass of water." He didn't turn. He just breathed. A long, slow, shuddering inhale. Then he set his glass down on the bar. He did it with such careful, measured precision I was terrified it would shatter. "I see," he said. He turned around. Slowly. His face. I will never, for as long as I live, forget his face in that moment. It wasn't the cold, arrogant mask of my captor. It was something primal. His jaw was clenched so tight a muscle jumped. His pale blue eyes were not cold, they were on fire, blazing with a white-hot, glacial fury that was the most terrifying thing I had ever seen. And it wasn't for me. I cringed, pressing myself harder into the marble wall, my own fear a pathetic, whimpering thing in the face of his monumental rage. "He did this," he whispered. It wasn't a question. "He trained you. Like a dog. He trained you to expect pain." I couldn't speak. I just shook my head, tears of terror and shame streaming down my face. "He put his mark on you," Alexander growled, taking a step toward me. I flinched again. He stopped, freezing in place. He looked at his own hands, large and scarred, and then back at me, and his expression was a terrible, dark void. "Clara." He said my name, and it was rough, like gravel. I will not hurt you. You have my word. I will not hurt you. He spoke the words like a vow, like a man trying to chain a beast. He turned from me abruptly and strode across the room to the dark hallway Olga had forbidden me to enter. He slammed his hand against a panel, and a door I hadn't even seen slid open, revealing his office. Come, he commanded over his shoulder, his voice a low, dangerous growl. I was too afraid not to. I followed him, my legs shaking, into the lion's inner sanctum. The room was nothing like the rest of the penthouse. This was his space. The walls were lined with dark wood shelves, filled with leather-bound books. A massive desk, carved from a single piece of dark wood, dominated the room. And one entire wall was not glass, but a bank of high-definition monitors, showing security feeds from the lobby, the garage, the elevator, and a dozen other places I didn't recognize. This was his web. He sat in the high-backed leather chair behind his desk. It was a throne. He tapped a key on his keyboard. One of the large monitors on the wall flickered to life. You think, he said, his voice still tight, that I am him. That I am just another animal, who will raise his hand to you. I don't. Be quiet, he snapped, not in anger, but in pure, focused command. You will watch. He tapped another key. A file opened on the screen. It was a police report. I saw the name, Marcus Pierce. You ran from him, Alexander said. But you do not know what you ran from. He tapped the key. Another report. A woman's face, her eyes swollen shut, her lips split. Jennifer Mullaney. 6 months ago. He put her in the hospital. She told the police she fell down the stairs. He hit the key. Sarah Jenkins. A year ago. A restraining order. He violated it twice. She dropped the charges. She was persuaded. He hit the key. Jessica Walsh. 2 years ago. Harassment. Stalking. A problem at her work. She was fired. She moved to another state. He hit the key again. The screen was filled with text messages. Vile, threatening, possessive. They were identical to the ones he'd sent me. I sank to my knees. The plush rug did nothing to cushion the blow. He wasn't just my monster. He was a serial predator. He was not just your problem, Malishka, Alexander said, his voice a low, cold river. He was a disease. A rat, carrying sickness. He was in my city. He was in my territory. He swiveled in his chair to face me, his pale eyes burning. I have rules, Clara. My world, it is not your world. It is bloody. It is hard. But it has rules. He leaned forward, his massive forearms resting on the desk. Rule 1, we do not hurt innocents. We do not hurt women. We do not hurt children. They are separate. They are to be protected. Rule 2, we do not bring chaos. What he did, he gestured to the screen, was chaos. It was messy. It was loud. It drew attention. It was bad for business. He stood up, walking around the desk to loom over me, where I knelt on his floor. When you ran into my car, you brought this filth to my attention. You brought it into my world. And my third, most important rule, he said, his voice dropping to a terrifying, intimate whisper, is that I protect what is mine. I looked up at him, my vision blurred by tears. I was still terrified. But it was a new terror. It was the awe-inspiring terror of a force of nature. It was the fear of a god. Marcus was just a broken, hateful, violent man. This was something else. This was a king. I did not kill him for you, Clara, he said, his voice like cold steel. I erased him, because he was filth. And because he dared, his voice dropped to a growl, to put his mark on my property. My blood ran cold. My property. I will never be him, he said, his voice softening just a fraction, the rage receding, leaving behind that cold, possessive control. I will never cause you to fear a sound. I will never strike you. I will feed you. I will clothe you. I will keep you so safe that you will forget his name, you will forget what it feels like to flinch. He reached down, not to me, but to the screen. He tapped a key, and all the images of Marcus's victims, of his reports, vanished. Replaced by the silent, shifting feeds of the garage. His memory is the last thing that can hurt you, he said. And I will not allow it. You are mine now, Clara. And you are clean. I will not have his filth on you. He left me there, on my knees in his office, and walked out, leaving the door open. I stayed there for a long time, the security feeds casting a silent, flickering blue light on my face. I was his prisoner. I was his property. But the man he had erased was a monster. Alexander wasn't a hero. He was the bigger monster, the one who kept the other monsters at bay. I was in a cage, yes. But for the first time in my life, I truly, absolutely believed that nothing else could get in. A week passed. Or maybe it was 2. Time in the penthouse was a flat, sterile loop. My bruises faded from a sickly yellow to a faint, ghostly memory on my skin. Olga fed me. I slept in the cloud-like bed. I wandered from one glass wall to the other, a silent curator in a museum of wealth, my footsteps erased by the thick white rugs. I was healing, my body knitting itself back together, but my mind was still a raw, open wound. Alexander remained a creature of dusk and shadow. He would arrive, his presence announced by the soft ding of the elevator, and the tension in the penthouse would ratchet up, becoming a high, thin wire of silence. We would eat our silent meals at the enormous table, him at the head, me on the side, a loyal subject seated at the king's court. I had learned his routines. I had learned to have my daily shower before he returned, so as not to be in the main living area when he arrived. I had learned to sit on the white sofa and wait, because it seemed to anger him less than finding me, hiding, in my room. I was, as he'd said, like a dog waiting by the door. And I hated myself for it. He still hadn't touched me. After that first night, when I had flinched from his hand on my neck, he had maintained a careful, almost clinical distance. He never brushed against me. He never handed me anything. He would place an object on a table and command me to take it. He was a man who was surgically removing any chance of me flinching from him again. Tonight, I was exhausted. The day had been long, the silence heavier than usual. I was on the sofa, waiting. The city lights were a river of diamonds, blurred and distant. I hadn't meant to fall asleep. It was an act of surrender, my body finally giving up on the high-strung, anxious weight. My eyes grew heavy, the city lights swirled, and I fell. I fell, not into sleep, but into that place. I wasn't in the penthouse. I was back. The carpet was rough and stained. The air was thick with the smell of stale beer and his cheap, musky cologne. Marcus. He was there, his face not yet angry, but smiling that slick, oily smile that always came before the rage. Where you been, Clara? You think you can just leave? No, Marcus, I just went for a walk. A walk, he sneered, his voice turning ugly. He took a step, and I took one back, my heel hitting the wall. Trapped. You lying to me? You seeing someone? No. I swear. You're a liar, he whispered, and his hand shot out, not at my face, but at my throat. His fingers wrapped around my neck, squeezing. Not hard enough to kill. Just hard enough to own. To remind me who had the power of my breath. I couldn't scream. The air was gone. I was clawing at his thick wrist, my vision starting to speckle with black dots. I woke with a violent, racking gasp, my own hands at my throat, clawing at my own skin. My eyes flew open. I wasn't there. I was in the penthouse. The lights were dim. The city was a dark, glittering tapestry. And he was there. Alexander. He was standing directly over the sofa, not even a foot away. He must have just arrived. His overcoat was still on, and he was staring down at me, his face a mask of such cold, lethal fury that my heart stopped. I scrambled back, tumbling off the sofa and onto the plush rug, my hands flying up to cover my face. "I'm sorry." I gasped, the words tumbling out. "I'm sorry, I fell asleep, I didn't mean to, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." He didn't move. He just watched me, a pathetic, trembling heap on his floor, cowering from a ghost. "You were dreaming," he stated. His voice was not his normal, cold, smooth baritone. It was a low, rough growl, like stones grinding together. I couldn't speak, just nodded, my hands still covering my head. Of him. Another nod, a sob shaking my whole body. I was so pathetic. So broken. "Get up," he commanded. It was not a request. I lowered my hands, my limbs shaking so badly I could barely obey. I used the sofa to pull myself up, my eyes on the floor, unable to meet his gaze. I was waiting for the punishment. For the yelling. For the "stop your crying. Look at me." I squeezed my eyes shut. "Clara. Smatri na menya. Look at me." I forced my head up. His face was still a mask of that terrifying, controlled rage. His pale eyes were blizzards. "He is gone," he said, his voice a low, brutal cadence. "He is people. He is ash. He is nothing. He cannot touch you. His ghost is not welcome in my home." "I know," I whispered, the tears streaming down my face, hot and shaming. "I know he's gone. My head knows it. But my body, it doesn't. It still remembers." I had admitted it. The final, broken part of me. I wasn't just his prisoner. I was a damaged, haunted thing. His property was defective. He looked at me for a long, agonizing moment. The fury in his eyes didn't lessen, but it shifted. It was no longer the anger of a king. It was the rage of a craftsman who finds a flaw in his most prized possession. A flaw he didn't put there. He turned from me, his movements stiff, and strode to the bar. I flinched, bracing for the sound of shattering glass. But there was only the clink of ice, the sound of water being poured. He walked back. He didn't hand me the glass. He placed it firmly on the black marble coffee table. A single, tall glass of ice water. "Drink," he commanded. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely pick it up. I brought it to my lips and drank. The water was so cold it was a shock, a jolt to my system that cut through the phantom fog of the dream. I drank all of it, the ice rattling against my teeth. I set the empty glass down. "You will not sleep here again," he said. It was a flat, final edict. I'm sorry, I won't, I just. "You are not a Sabachka," he growled. "Not a pet dog to wait by the door. This is not your place." He looked at me, his gaze still hard, but the rage was banking, replaced by that cold, deep control. "You will go to your room. You will lock your door." I stared at him. "Lock my door?" "Yes," he said, as if I were a fool. "It has a lock. Use it. No one will enter. Not Olga. Not me. You are safe in that room. Do you understand?" He was giving me a cage within the cage. A place he would not go. He was giving me back a single, small piece of control. Yes. "Thank you." He nodded once, a sharp, curt gesture. "He has left his grayas, his filth, in your mind," he said, his voice laced with disgust. I will not have it in my home. You will sleep. You will get strong. You will forget him. It was a command. He was ordering me to heal. He turned, shrugging off his heavy coat and tossing it on the chair. He loosened his tie, his movements sharp, angry. I have work to do. He strode to his office, not looking back. The door slid shut with a soft snick, sealing him inside his own world of screens and shadows. I was alone. The silence of the penthouse rushed in, but this time, it felt different. The terror from the nightmare was fading, replaced by a profound, shaking, confusion. He hadn't yelled. He hadn't told me I was stupid or weak for being afraid. He hadn't touched me, either in anger or in comfort. He had seen me broken, seen the mark of the other monster, and his response had been practical. He had given me water. He had commanded me to be warm. He had given me a lock for my door. He was a monster, yes. A cold, possessive, terrifying man who erased people. But he was not Marcus. I walked to my room, my legs still unsteady. As I passed the kitchen, Olga was there, placing a small tray on the counter. A cup of steaming herbal tea and a small, delicate pastry. She didn't look at me, just pushed the tray forward and went back to her work. I took it and went to my room. I closed the door, and my hand went to the lock. A simple, modern button. I pressed it. I heard it click into place. I was locked in. A prisoner, by my own hand, inside a larger prison. I got into the bed, the tea warming my hands. I was still his property. I was still trapped. But the terror that had been my constant companion for so long, it was finally, blessedly, starting to recede. I was in a cage. But the bars were not to hurt me. They were to keep everything else out. And the jailer, the cold, brutal king of this empty, sky-high palace, was, for reasons I couldn't possibly understand, determined to keep me safe. Epilogue: The view from the cage. 6 months later. I was standing in front of the wall of glass, the one in the main room. It was night, and the city was a breathtaking, infinite ocean of light. I was no longer a ghost. I was a resident. I was wearing a simple, dark blue dress. Not gray, not black. Alexander had come home 3 weeks ago, found me in my usual gray sweater, and his brow had furrowed. You look like a nun. A sad nun, he'd said, his voice laced with that familiar, gruff distaste. Olga. Take her. Get colors. So Olga had. We'd gone down in the elevator, flanked by 2 silent men in black suits, Dmitri and another one named Pavel. They had driven us to a private, high-end salon, where I was measured, and a woman had shown me fabrics. I had been terrified to choose. In the end, I'd pointed to a simple, dark blue. It was the first decision I'd made in months. Now, I was wearing it. It felt strange. It felt like me. The ding of the elevator sounded. I didn't flinch. I didn't even turn. I just watched his reflection as it approached mine in the glass. He stopped behind me, his usual few feet of distance. He was in his suit, as always. You are looking at the city, he observed. Yes, I said, my voice quiet, but steady. It's beautiful tonight. It is, just a city, he said. We stood in silence for a moment, 2 figures reflected in the night sky. Olga made borscht, he said. It is good. You will eat. I know, I said. I can smell it. He didn't move to the table. I didn't move from the window. This was our new ritual. This, hesitation. This slow, glacial orbit. The reports, from your classes, he said, changing the subject. They were on my desk. Oh, I said, my heart giving a small, hopeful leap. After the nightmare, weeks later, he had come home and dropped a high-end laptop on the coffee table. You are bored, he'd stated. It is not good. You will, do something. Find a class. Online. Art. Something, quiet. I had enrolled in a graphic design course. The one I'd wanted to take before Marcus. I had been working on it every day, in my room, with the door locked. They were good, he said, the admission sounding like it was physically painful for him. The designs are strong. Thank you, I whispered to his reflection. He took a step closer. I could feel the heat of his body, the faint, clean scent of his cologne. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I just waited. My heart was beating, but it was a strong, steady rhythm, not the frantic panic of a trapped bird. You are not afraid, he stated. It wasn't a question. He was observing. No, I said, and I was surprised to find it was the truth. Not of you. Good, he growled. He took another step. He was right behind me now. I could feel his breath on my hair. I watched his reflection, his hard, granite face, his pale, piercing eyes, no longer cold, but focused. Intense. Slowly, as if moving a mountain, he lifted his hand. I watched it in the glass. He didn't reach for my neck, or my arm. He reached for my hand, which was resting on the window ledge. He didn't grab it. He just laid his large, warm, scarred hand over mine. My entire body went rigid. But it wasn't fear. It was a jolt. A powerful, electric shock. His skin was warm. His touch was firm, possessive, and impossibly gentle. I didn't pull away. His thumb moved, just once, a slow, deliberate stroke over my knuckles. Moya, he whispered. Mine. I closed my eyes. I was still in his cage. I was still his property. But the cage was no longer cold. And the monster, my monster, was standing behind me, his hand over mine, keeping me safe from a world I never wanted to see again. What part of Clara and Alexander's story did you find the most intriguing? Was it the moment he showed her Marcus's file, revealing why he'd erased him? Or was it this final, quiet moment, when he finally touched her, and she didn't flinch? What do you think will happen next in this gilded cage? Please let me know in the comments. Your subscription is a huge support for me and this channel. It means the world to me, as I'm still young and trying to grow. Please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, and I'll see you in the next interesting story.